Okay, welcome back to Sanhedrin. Who can remember where we left off last time? What were we about to learn? We just gave a little intro to it. Just to answer Hannah's question, physically we are all in our own homes, Hannah. This is the moment. This is a Zoom only shiur. Thinking about making it into a hybrid, but we'll have to take a straw poll because it's a decent chance I'll be sat there on my own in shul, because I think we've been doing this for so long on Zoom. I'm not sure we'll do it, but at the moment we're just on Zoom.
The notification note said at the beginning of the week that it was Zoom and in person.
Ah, that was incorrect. I'll get Shoshana to correct that.
Yes, because I'm sitting here at the Bet Knesset.
Oh, I'm sorry, Hannah. I'm sorry that you've schlepped out there. Right. Okay. I do apologise.
In the car and listening in the car.
We'll crack on today, and then we'll correct that. In fact, what we'll do is we'll take a straw poll of seeing if anybody's interested in coming to shul, and if they are, I'm happy to do it in shul. I quite like the in person.
Okay.
So, my apologies that you've schlepped out there for well, hopefully not for nothing, but
no, not for nothing.
Unnecessarily.
Actually, it doesn't bother me on Zoom. I mean, if you want to keep on Zoom, I'll just stay at home and do it there.
Right. Okay. Right. Well, let's tell you where we're up to at least. We have been talking up until now about how what kind of person needed to be on the Sanhedrin. We talked about people who had to be good looking and tall and know a lot of languages, and we finished that subject, and we're now starting a new subject. We're going back to the Mishnah, and right at the beginning the Mishnah asked a question. I'll put the Gemarah on the screen for you to start with. There is the Gemarah on the screen now. Okay, we are over here at our little symbol over here. The Mishnah said, Kama yehei ba'ir v'hei re'uya l'Sanhedrin. How, well, basically, what constitutes a city? How many people needs to be in a city for it to be called a city? Why are we interested in it being called a city? Because we know that every city has to have its own Sanhedrin. How many people sit on the city Sanhedrin? How many people sit? Go on, Johnny. I think you said it right. You're muted.
23.
23, correct. The city Sanhedrin consists of 23 judges. Now, the question is, what constitutes a city? Now, apart from Hannah, we are all from the UK who is on this thing. So I shall ask Avril. In the UK, what constitutes a city?
No idea.
No idea. Jeffrey knows. What constitutes a city, Jeffrey?
Cathedral.
Cathedral. If a place has a cathedral, it is called a city, and it gets granted a city status. There is a charter, but you have to have a cathedral. I'm not quite sure what the difference is between a big church and a cathedral, but there you go. I'm not really all that interested. We've got better things to think about. But anyway, that is what constitutes a city in the UK, is if it's got a cathedral. That is not the case, you will not be surprised to know, what the Gemarah says. The Gemarah does not talk about having a cathedral. So the Gemarah does say, it quotes the Mishnah, and the Mishnah says, well, the Mishnah has two different opinions. We're going to start with, obviously, the first opinion, the Tana Kama. The first opinion says, Mea ve'esrim. There has to be 120 people living there for it to be called a city. That's not very much, is it? So 120 people, according to the Gemarah, according to the Mishnah, constitutes a city. Now we have this idea in our head.
120 men. 120 men.
120 men. Okay, well done, Johnny, for pointing that out. That is true. 120 men. We have this idea in our mind that a city is a big thing, right? The city of London, the city of Manchester, the city of wherever. Salford, yeah, lots of people. City of New York, 10 million people or something ridiculous like that. But of course, back in the day, cities were very small. And the thing that's important to us just on that basis, just as an aside, is that we learn in Tanakh about the kings of various places. We think about the king of Shechem, the king of Hebron, the king of Shinar, the king of all these places. And we think of them as being very powerful people. They may have ruled over only 120 people. Cities were very, very small. I think I've told you this before once. I once went on a tiul, a Tanakh tiul, to a place called Sha'arayim, which is mentioned in the Torah and Tanakh. Sha'arayim. And Sha'arayim, as its name implies, is a city with 2 gates. And the reason it had 2 gates is because it was considered a large city. You wouldn't normally have 2 gates for a city, because the gate is the weakest point of the city, and you would only have 1 gate because you want to reduce the weakness of the city. The rest of it is surrounded by a wall, and the gate is the weakest point. So you wouldn't normally have 2 gates, but this was a particularly large city, and it took a full half an hour to walk round the circumference of this large city. Half an hour, that's all it took, because it was small. Even a large city in Tanakh terms is small. So we shouldn't be surprised that a city constitutes only 120 men. But that's what the Mishnah says, 120 men. Now, what the Gemarah is going to say now is going to ask why this Tana, the Tana Kama, we're not told who it is, why he says 120. Where has he plucked that 120 figure from? What's the relevance of these 120 men? Says the Gemarah, my ve'esrim my avidtaihu. What is the purpose? What is the this is the same word as avod, to work. What is the purpose? What's it for? These 120 men. What are their function? So now we're going to try and work out what a city has to have in order to be called a city. It has to have 120 people, but not just stam any 120 men. There has to be specific types of men which make up this 120. So we start with the obvious. Says the Gemarah, Esrim Ushlosha. We need the first 23, Keneged Sanhedri Ktana. Well, if it's a city, it's got to have a Sanhedrin. We've already said that. So there's your first 23. Okay. Now, the next bit's a bit tricky. V'shalosh shurot shel esrim ushlosha. 3 rows of 23 people. As well as the Sanhedrin of 23, you have a further 3 rows of 23 people. What is that for? What's the 3 rows of 23 for? Why do we need 3 rows? Any suggestions? We have learnt this in passing many months ago.
They're the council to advise them.
Not quite, but you're on the right idea.
I'm just reading in the Gemarah.
You're the right idea, and that is that there are certain situations where you end up with a hung parliament, a hung based in. Now, how can that be? Because we've got an odd number. 23 is an odd number. Well, we had it before. If you remember, a few months ago, we learned that there is a possibility that somebody's not sure. He can't make his mind up. And so you're then left with 22 judges. So what do? Do you remember? They add on additional judges until they get a proper majority. So these 3 rows of 23 judges are, if you like, judges in waiting. They are scholars who are not on the Sanhedrin, but may be required to be added to the Sanhedrin to enable it to come to a majority decision. So you have these 3 rows of student, or not student, what do they call them? What's the word I'm looking for?
Disciples.
Not they are judges in waiting. They are
like interns.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, they are people who are waiting there, ready to join the Sanhedrin should it be required.
They're on the substitutes bench.
The substitutes bench. Yes, that's right. We've got a substitutes bench of 3 rows of judges. Absolutely, a substitutes bench. So that takes us to how many? Who's good at maths?
92.
92. Well done. How did you know that, Johnny?
It's in front of me on the screen.
It is, yeah. I thought you were going to tell me you added them all up, and I was going to be.
I did to check it, but
yeah. Very good. Hare tishim v'tarte. That makes 92. Now we need, how many left do we need? We need another 100. We need another 28, right, to reach our 120. So what are the other 28 people we need? Now the first 10 are a fascinating bunch. Va'asara batlanim shel beit knesset. 10 batlanin. What does batlan? If you're called a batlan, what are you?
A lazy sod.
Okay, Hannah says you're a lazy sod if you're a batlan. Okay, that is true. The modern use of that word batlan comes from the word batel, of course, which means to be annulled. In other words, you're a waste of time. What is bitul zman?
A waste of time.
Waste of time. What is bitul Torah? Somebody who wastes his time not learning Torah. Okay, so this word bitul has a rather negative connotation. And as Hannah has said, this is a modern usage of the word. You call somebody a batlan, it means you're a lazy good for nothing. And so what have we got here is we've got 10 lazy good for nothings of the Beit Knesset. So 10 lazy good for nothings of the shul. What is he talking about? Who were these 10 batlanim?
I've got a note in my Gemarah that said there are 10 people who stay in the Beit Knesset all the time, so that there's always a minyan there, because God gets angry if there isn't a minyan there.
All right, so that's exactly what the situation is. It's a very interesting expression, batlanim. It doesn't mean the negative connotation that we ascribe to it today. What it means is that they are idle, not in idle, I-D-O-L, but idle, I-D-L-E. They are idle, meaning that they don't have a job. Now, they don't have a job, so that they are in shul the whole time to make sure that when it comes to davening, there is always a minyan. Now, so they could be retired folk who don't have a job, or they could be people who are of independent means and don't need to earn a living, or it could be that they are unemployable or whatever. But they are 10 people who are free to be available for a minyan at all times. Okay, because there must be, in a city, there must be a minyan available at every davening time. You can't have a city where there's no Shachris, Mincha, or Mariv. It's not called a city. Now, Hannah mentioned something there, that God gets angry if if there is no minyan. Where do we learn that from? That God gets angry if there's no minyan in the shul. Where do we learn that from? Well, we learn it from a different Gemara, which I'm going to put on the screen now. This is Gemarah Brachot, page 6, Amud Bet 6b. Okay, they were talking about the shuls, davening. Okay, and the Gemara says here, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, "B'sha'a she'hakadosh Baruch Hu ba bebet hakneset." At the time when HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes to the shul, v'lo matzah ba asara, and he does not find 10 people there, miyad, immediately, hu ko'es, he becomes angry. And he quotes a pasuk in Yeshayahu. I'll take you to that now. There it is, chapter 50 of Yeshayahu, Isaiah. It's on the screen. Jeffrey, would you like to read verses 1 and 2 for us, please?
So said the Lord, where's your mother's bill of divorce that I sent her away? Or, who is it of my creditors to whom I sold you? Behold, for your iniquities you were sold, and for your transgressions your mother was sent away. Why have I come, and there is no man? Why have I called, and no one answers? Is my hand too short to redeem? Or do I have no strength to save? Behold, my rebuke I dry up the sea. I make rivers into a desert. Their fish become foul because there is no water, and die because of thirst.
Okay, anybody, any idea what Yeshayahu is talking about here?
The Jews not being observant of Torah.
Okay, yes,
Jewish people.
that's true. Most of Yeshayahu was telling us off, so that's right. Specifically, what is he talking about here? Anybody, any idea? What is the particular telling off we're getting here? Is this? So he says, so says Hashem, where is your mother's bill of divorce that I sent her away? Or who is it of my creditors to whom I sold you? Don't think that it's someone else's fault that you are being sold into slavery. He's talking here about the impending destruction, the galut, and he says, don't blame somebody else. Don't think that it was your mother's fault, as it were, that she was I divorced your mother and you had to go with it. Don't think that I owe the Babylonians something, and so I've sold you into slavery to fulfill a debt. No, behold, for your iniquities you were sold. It's your own fault. You are the ones who are to blame. And for your transgressions, your mother was sent away. It's your own fault. Your sins are responsible for this galut, says Yeshayahu. And then it comes to our pasuk here. Madua bati ve'ein ish. Why have I come and there is no man? Meaning, he's come to the house of prayer. He's come to the Beit HaMikdash or the Beit Knesset or whatever it is, the place where people have gathered to worship God, and nobody there. Why not? Because they're off at the football match, or they've gone to worship Baal somewhere, or they've gone off. What they're not doing is what they should be doing, which is praying to God. Why have I called and no one answers? What do? You go into a house and nobody's there, and they should be there. What do? You call, hello, is anybody here? Where is everyone? Kadosh Baruch Hu calls out, nobody answers. And so he says, you'll see He says, with my rebuke, I dry up the sea. I make rivers into a desert. Their fish, that means the rivers, the fish of the rivers will become foul because there's no water. I will punish you. That's what he's saying. I'll punish you. So he's getting angry. You can see this is an angry God here. And that's what the Gemarah is referring to, or Rabbi Yochanan is referring to in this Gemarah, when he says, when Hashem enters the synagogue and does not find 10 people, he immediately becomes angry, as it is stated. Why then, when I came, was there no one? Why, when I called, was there no one to answer? So there must be 10 people who are available for a minyan at all times. That is the Asarat Baklanim. So the word Baklan here does not have the negative connotation of the modern use of the word. It is a positive thing. If you are fortunate enough in Gemarah terms to be a Baklan, it means that you are available at all times to be part of God's congregation, to be part of the minyan. You stay in shul, presumably you learn, and you're available there waiting for the minyan to be part of the minyan. So that is the Asara Baklanim Shel Beit Knesset. Okay, can you see the Gemarah? I've put it back on the screen. Can you see that? Can't hear you, Johnny, you're muted.
Why doesn't Rabbi Steinsaltz mention that about the minyan? He puts about it, they sort of like yakkening after davening, they're always there doing repairs and other stuff. He doesn't mention about the minyan.
Yeah, I think that's, well, what are they doing while they're waiting for the minyan? They're doing the repairs and rolling the Sefer Torah, the people like Jonathan Raymond and Eli Assad, the ones that and Ishai, the guys that get there early. And, we all think when we arrive that there's a little elf that comes at night that does everything, that rolls the Sefer Torah, that changes the mantles to white and back from white to red, etc. These things don't happen on their own. And so presumably these...
That's why he stresses that.
Yeah, these Baklanim do all these jobs. Their main role, as the Gemarah in Brachot tells us, their main role was to be available for a minyan, but presumably they're there the whole time, making sure everything's okay. They're emptying the dishwasher, they're sweeping the floors, they're doing all the things that need to be done in the shul. So it just amused me that they are called Batlanim, which is a very negative expression in today's usage, but it doesn't mean that in this case.
Not when you were away, they didn't empty the dishwasher.
Ah, well, there you go.
I know.
The little elf was on holiday.
Correct.
Hare Mea Utre. So now we're up to how many?
102.
102, 92, 23. First of all, 23 judges, 3 rows of 22, that's 69 on the substitutes bench, and 10 little elves, 10 little minion men. That's 102. So we still got to find another 18. All right. Now then, I want you to count these up. Shnei Sofrim. 2 Sofrim. 2, what is a Sofer? Scribes. 2 scribes. Why do we need 2?
Does one check the other one's work?
Yes, you have to have 2 Adim.
Yeah.
You have to always have 2 witnesses. So if one of the scribes or the stenographers, I think we probably call them today, we're not talking necessarily about Sofer Stam. We generally speaking call a Sofer somebody who writes a Sefer Torah and Tefillin. We call them a Sofer, don't we? But in Hebrew, or in Israel, we would not call them a Sofer. We would call them a Sofer Stam. Why do we call them a Sofer Stam? Because a Sofer just means somebody who writes. What's Stam?
Sefrei Torah, Tehillim, Tefillin and Mezuzot.
Yes, very good. Stam, Samach stands for Sefer Torah. Taf stands for Tefillin. And Mem stands for Mezuzah. So a Sofer Stam is a scribe who writes Sifrei Torah, Tefillin, and Mezuzot, what we would call in Chutz La'aretz a Sofer.
Yeah.
Right? Here
Yeah.
we call them a Sofer Stam. We specify what kind of scribe they are. This is not talking about two Sofrei Stam. These are talking about Sofrei Mishpat. What's a Sofer Mishpat?
Write down judgments.
Yeah, it's a court stenographer. The court stenographer. Yeah. I don't know if they do it today in court because it's probably all electronically recorded. But until fairly recently in court, you used to have this person, usually a lady, typing away like crazy as people are speaking and typing verbatim what was said. And that was, they're known as the court stenographers. Now, here, these sofrim that the Gemara is talking about are the court stenographers. Look what Rabbi Steinzat says. In addition, there are two scribes required for the Sanhedrin. He doesn't say there are two scribes required for writing Sifrei Torah. These are the Sanhedrin, the court's stenographers, and we need two for the reason we said before, one to check the other's work, because this is testimony. And a later date, that testimony may need to be brought to a court of law. So we have the concept, which is still very, very strong today, of legal precedent. Legal precedent, which means that you often rule cases on the basis of previous rulings of similar cases. So a judge will say that a court, usually a higher court than him, has previously judged a case which is similar to this and set a legal precedent. And so therefore the judge will rule according to that legal precedent. Now, how does the judge know what the legal precedent is? Well, there is the official record of the court. The official record of the court. And who writes that official record of the court? The court stenographer. Now, if it is going to be used in that purpose as legal precedent, it becomes, as it were, a legal document. It becomes an official legal document. All Jewish legal documents require how many witnesses?
Two.
Two. You have to have two witnesses on a ketubah. You have to have two witnesses, lo aleinu, on a divorce, on a get. You have to have two witnesses on a loan document. Any legal document requires two witnesses. And so therefore, you need two scribes. You need two scribes, two stenographers. So that now has taken us to how many? 104, correct. Next one, Shnei Chazanin. Chazanin, what do you think that means without looking at the translation? Two Chazanim. If I just said to you, Jeffrey, there are two Chazanim, what would you think there were?
Two singers.
You would think there were two singers, so would I. You would think there were two Chazans, okay? But it doesn't mean that. It means, how does, I'm just having a look.
Bailiffs.
Well, it is bailiffs. It says bailiffs, but what is the connection between a chazan and a bailiff? A chazan, as we know it, Jeffrey says a singer. What is the connection? Come on, let's use a bit of lateral thinking here.
Chazan is to say is future is like to see into the future or to see what's around.
Okay, Chazan is a vision. You're right. You're right, but that isn't the root of this. That's not the root. But you're right. Chazan is a vision. What is the connection between what we call a Chazan, a Shliach Tzibor, and a bailiff?
Doing something on behalf of somebody else. The bailiffs are carrying out the judgments, and the Chazan's doing the service on behalf of the congregation.
Absolutely correct, Avril. Well done. The Chazan is, I gave you a clue because I said the Chazan was the Shliach Tzibor. What is a Shliach Tzibor? What does the word Shaliach mean?
Messenger.
A messenger. And what does the word Tzibor mean?
The congregation.
Congregation, or the public, or the community. So a Shliach Tzibor is a messenger of the community. He is acting on behalf of the community by doing what? By saying the prayers, right? By leading the prayers. He is an officer of the community, okay? The Chazan is the officer of the community. And by the way, this is the root, this is the makar, this is the source for us calling the Shliach Tzibor the Chazan. So when somebody says, I don't like Chazonus, right? He means, I don't like singers. I don't like them making a big performance. It's not a correct usage of the word. Chazanut means being an officer of the court. We don't use it in that regard now, but this is fascinating. This is the source of the use of the word Chazan. The Chazan, hang on a sec, Jeff. The Chazan was not only the Shliach Tzibor, very often. The Chazan was also often, many places did not have a full-time singer to sing for them. The Chazan did other things. Jeffrey, you'll remember our lovely Chazan, Laser Potash, Zifrono Livracha. You'll remember him as well, Johnny. Maybe Avril's nodding. She probably remembers him too. He was such a lovely man. He was very much part of my growing up, but he wasn't a full-time Chazan. What was his other job, Jeffrey?
I think he was a shochet.
He was a sheikhet. He was a slaughterer. And who was he slaughtering on behalf of?
The Beis Din.
Of the Beis Din. And who is the Beis Din working for?
Tzibor.
The Tzibor. The Tzibor. So he was a true Chazan in the pure sense of the Gemarah word of the Chazan. He was an officer of the community. He was a sheikhet. He was a shliach tzibor. You often find that a sheikhet will be also a moel. Who can give me an example of that from our hometown? Who was a sheikhet and a moel?
Sidney Olsberg.
Shimshon Olsberg, Sidney Olsberg. He was my moel. He was also my sheikhet, I guess, because I probably ate his meat. So again, he was an officer of the town, doing shchita, doing milah. So you can see that this word chazan has become, in our usage, a very narrow interpretation of the word. The source of the word is that actually, and the Steinsaltz, and sorry, the art scroll translates it really nicely, and he says Shnei Chazanim, 2 court officers. Rav Steinsaltz has
you froze then, Johnny. How did they describe it? Sorry. How did the art scroll describe it?
2 court officers. Now, Rav Steinsaltz has drilled down on that, and in this particular situation, these court officers are acting as bailiffs. So he's called it bailiffs. But the word chazan means a court officer, as I've proved to you by the use of our use of the word chazan. So a fascinating piece of etymology there. David's got a smile on his face, and he's going to
just look at note 14 in the art scroll, Johnny.
Yes, they are. Well, that's right. Yes. We'll come to that in a minute, actually. Well, let's come to it straight away. So these court officers, according to Rav Steinsaltz, they were bailiffs. What does a bailiff do?
Goes to collect debts.
It collects the debts. Yeah, if you owe the court.
He's an enforcement officer.
An enforcement officer. Very good, Jeffrey. An enforcement officer. A bailiff is an enforcement officer. David Marks has just pointed us to the Art Scroll note, which says that these court officers were not just bailiffs. They were enforcement officers. What other enforcement might they have done? What is the purpose of this court? The court is to establish innocence or guilt. If it's in monetary matters, then the bailiffs obviously would be the enforcement officers, would be there to act as bailiffs to go and collect the debt. What if it was not a monetary matter and it was a halachic matter? What is the punishment for breaking the halacha? What is the punishment for for transgressing a negative commandment? So, for example, let me think of a good example. You have eaten treif. What's the punishment for eating treif?
Various physical punishments, weren't there? Lashes and.
Okay, very good. Lashes. Lashes are called what in Hebrew? They have two names.
Skila,
No. That's the death penalty, John.
Yeah, I know.
What is lashes called? There are two names. David, help us out.
Makot and Malkut.
Yes,
Yeah.
makot and malkut. Now, makot is also a modern Hebrew word. If you say ani makeh otcha, means I hit you in modern Hebrew. So makot means lashes, hitting. Now, it just so happens that there is a masechet makot. Okay, there is a masechet, there is a Gemarah which talks all about how the punishment is given. Okay, and it just so happens that I had got this ready before we started, because I had also read that note 14 that David pointed out. There it is on the screen for you. Can you see that? Makot chaf bet amad bet. And the Mishnah says, how do they flog him? Well, this tells you how these makot, these lashes, took place. We don't need to go into the details. It's rather gruesome. But then the important bit is, it says that Chazan HaKnesset Omeid Alav. Chazan HaKnesset. The Chazan of the Shul stands over him, Uretzua, and the strap is in his hand. Right? What did Rabbi Bolkin say with his strap in his hand?
Both hands together.
He says, you're treifa dodger.
Yeah.
Right? You're a treifa dodger, you got the strap. Well, Rabbi Bolkin didn't make it all up, right? He had his strap. Now, look what isn't this interesting, though? Look what the Mishnah says. Chazan HaKnesset. That does not mean the person who's doing the davening in shul has to go and do the thing. It means Chazan in its true sense, the court officer. So here is the proof of the pudding here, that the court officer, the Chazan HaKnesset, this is why Rav Steinsaltz's translation of bailiff is a particular translation for this Mishnah about collecting debts. But the same guy will have been the guy that gave out the flogging, the Chazan HaKnesset. And there had to be two of them. Why did there have to be two of them? Let's go back to the Gemarah. Why did there have to be two of them? Why not just one?
He's talking about the flogging there because he'd be struggling to follow.
Okay, maybe he needs somebody to hold him down. It's really the bailiff issue, because again, you need the witnesses, because it's a legal action. If you're going to collect a debt, how do we know that that debt is paid? Well, you have two witnesses, don't you? I am a witness that Chaim Yankel paid his debt to the court. Well, if you just got one bailiff, that's no good, because he could just lie, couldn't he? And say, you never gave me the money. And so the guy says, I did give you the money. And he says, no, you didn't. Well, the guy can say, look, I've got two witnesses to it, you and the other guy. Well, of course, you could have false witnesses, but we'll come to that in a minute. So two chazanim, because you need to have witnesses. So where are we up to now? 106. Yeah.
Okay, Johnny, what I was smiling at was the connection between all four things that we've associated with the Chazan today: Mila, Shechita, Malkut, and Shliach Tzibur. And for those people who don't like Chazanut, one could say that all four inflict pain.
Very nice. Very good. Very good. Yes. Yes. Okay. Shechita, Mila, Shliach Tzibur, and Malchus. Yes, they all inflict pain, and the bailiffs do as well. They inflict monetary pain. They make you skint. Very good. I like that. That can go in Chidushay Poleg, David. Excellent. Okay, we're up to 106. We still need another 14 to make our 120. All right. Now then, can we get to 120 in the next 7 minutes? Let's see. Oshnei Baalei Dinin. What is a Baal Din? What is a Baal Din? What is a Baal Musaf?
A Baal Tefillah is the person who davens.
Right, the Baal Tefillah is the person that davens. So what's the Baal Din, Johnny?
The person who's going to be judged.
Yeah, he's the litigant. You need two litigants. You need, if you're in a monetary court, you need somebody who's claiming and somebody from whom he is claiming. Okay, so you need at least two litigants. What's the point of having a court, a Sanhedrin, if you haven't got any litigants? So Shnei Baalei Din, that's the claimant and the defendant. Okay, so now what are we up to?
But you don't have to have two bad people. Two bailiffs, just in case they have to go and collect money, so that's their position. But if there's no one owing money or anything like that, you can't just say.
But there's no point in having a Sanhedrin if there cannot be any litigants, right? If there's not enough people to litigate, then there's no point in having a court. So what we're trying to do is to establish what is the minimum number of people required in order to have a Sanhedrin.
You have the court in case there are bad people there, or there's a case that needs a court. We can't.
Now, if there's a case that needs to court, you have to have.
Oh, there's no work for you this week, so we're going.
Right, that's fine, but there has to be a possibility that there's work for you.
Possibility,
right? So you have to have two people who could be litigants. Doesn't matter who they are. Okay, doesn't mean that you have to always have somebody that's a litigant. You have to have two people who are potential litigants. Right. So that takes us to 108, right? 102, two Sofrim 104, two Chazanim 106, and two litigants 108. Now, if you've got a court, what else do you need apart from litigants?
A steward or a clerk.
Well, the clerk is the Chazanim. They double up as the clerk. They are the clerks of the court.
Aid him.
Adam, you need witnesses. Can't have a court case without witnesses. How many do you need?
4, 2 for each side.
Oh, not necessarily.
And maybe just 2.
You need 2. Initially, anyway, you need 2 witnesses because remember, Avril, we're talking about the minimums required here. You can have as many as you want. But minimum requirements, what we're trying to do is to work out the minimum number of people that have to be in a place for it to be called a city, because it's only called a city if it has not a cathedral, but a Sanhedrin. Okay? So the way we're working this out is how many people do we need for a place to have a Sanhedrin? So you need to have 2 witnesses. So now we're up to 110. Right? Now, you also need to have 2 other people who could possibly refute the testimony of the first lot of witnesses. What are they called?
The witness for the prosecution.
Well, they're called Adim Zomamim. They are people that say, they are the ones that say those 2 witnesses could not have seen what went on Tuesday afternoon, because on Tuesday afternoon they were with us at the bowling alley, right? So they could not have possibly have been at the scene of the crime or at the scene of the loan. They could not have witnessed the loan when they say they witnessed the loan at the place they witnessed the loan, because they weren't there. They were with us. They're called Adim Zomamim. They are people who discredit the first lot of witnesses. Now, if you don't have enough people that there could be discrediting witnesses, that would be a very great encouragement for the first lot of witnesses to lie, because there's nobody to challenge them, right? Nobody to challenge them, right? And I can tell you, not that, God forbid I would ever lie, but being an expert witness is a lot easier when you are jointly appointed by both sides. Okay, sometimes I'm appointed in my work by the claimant. Sometimes I'm appointed or instructed by the defendant, and sometimes I'm instructed by both sides to be a joint expert. Now, if I'm appointed by the claimant side, I know that the defendant's going to have an equally qualified doctor on the other side who's going to challenge what I say. So I have to be absolutely 110% sure of what I'm saying, and vice versa. But if I am a jointly appointed expert, there's nobody going to challenge me. Effectively, I can say what I want, because there's no other expert in my field in the court who's allowed to challenge me. I'm jointly appointed, and it's a much easier job. It's human nature. You can't get away from that. So if there is nobody going to challenge these witnesses, the temptation not to do a proper job, or even to lie, God forbid, is much greater. So you must have 2 people available for challenging those witnesses. So that is how many now? 102, 104, 106, 108, 110. What is that? 112? No, 112.
112.
112. And then we have to have Shnei Zomami Zomamin. We have to have another 2, says the Mishnah, who could refute the second 2. Now, you're going to say to me, well, you could go on forever. But they'd say 3 lots. That's it. Okay? So that takes us Hare Mea Va'arbei Asar, 114. So we never made it to 120 before time is up. So, one sec, Jeff. Don't look on. And next week, leave you on a cliffhanger. See if you can think on without looking in. See if you can think on, and we'll discuss it next week. What are the 6 remaining people we need to make up 120 of a city? Just recap before we go on to Jeffrey. Recap: 23 in the Sanhedrin, 69 on the substitutes bench, 2 stenographers, 2 court officials, 2 litigants, 2 witnesses, 2 opposing witnesses, and 2 further opposing witnesses. Takes us to 114. We're 6 short. And Johnny, you're muted.
10 Batalim as well.
Oh yes, I forgot the 10 Batlanim. Thank you. The 10 minion men. That takes us to that 102. So we're up to 114. Yes, Jeffrey.
What about Shamash?
Shamash to do what?
To do whatever it needs doing.
So that's the 10 Batlanim. The 10 minion men. They're the ones that do the Shamash's job. They light the candles. They make sure the wine is bought. They make sure the dishwasher's undone, etc. That's the 10 Batlanim.
What about the jailer?
Okay, that's the jailer is the Chazan. He's the part of their job is to the enforcement officer. That's part of their job. So I'm still 6 short, and you can tell me next week what 6 you think. Don't look on in the Gemarah, and then we will discuss that next week. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording now, unless anybody has anything more to say about this. I will stop the recording.